Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, Jeff, from superpowers to superbugs, it seems like mankind and the environment that he has created for himself, of course, through a series of poor choices, is starting to collapse on itself and also to implode. Yeah, from one step to another. Bacteria are becoming more resistant to drugs through overuse, and it appears that there's no genuine trust in the international community. And here at home, local violence is showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon. But first, we're going to take you to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, for a report on the latest mass shooting in Chicago. Larry, it seems to be a growing epidemic throughout the nation, but Chicago seems to be kind of an epicenter. What are officials saying is the cause of this latest round of violence?
No motive has been released at this time, Katan, as police say suspected gang members armed with a heavy caliber rifle opened fire late night at a crowded park. In all, 13 people were wounded, including a 3-year-old child. Amazingly, no one was killed in the incident, and police are still searching for the gunman. And this was only one of several shootings here in Chicago, where 23 people were wounded and 3 died in just one night. Children on bicycles, riding scooters, and in cars with parents have all been shot this year. 18 of them, 15 years old or younger, died, and 3 of them were under 6. The 3-year-old, who was shot in the head but is expected to pull through, witnessed his uncle gunned down just 2 weeks ago in an environment where some residents say violence is starting to become an accepted part of life.
Now, Larry, have the local officials mentioned anything about coming up with a plan to stop this current wave of violence or prevent future acts of violence from taking place?
Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy says the real culprit is illegal guns, which belong on the battlefield and not street corners. And in an interview, he stated that while his expectation is that there will be violence, he also believes that they will be reducing it all the time. Progress, not victory, is his motto. Meanwhile, Mayor Emanuel also released a statement in an effort to reassure and comfort those struggling to cope with the violence that has become the curse of this city. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan, Jeff, back to you.
We appreciate your report, Larry. Well, the carnage doesn't stop in Chicago. Another deadly mass shooting has once again occurred, this time in our nation's capital. This marks the 3rd mass shooting in our nation this year. The headquarters of the Naval Sea Systems Command was the target this time. Now, one lone gunman so far that we know of went on this latest attack, leaving behind 13 dead in his wake and numerous others injured, including a police officer. Now, one of the dead is the alleged gunman, a Navy reservist, 34-year-old Aaron Alexis, who also worked as a Navy contractor.
Of course, the motive for this latest mass shooting in what appears to be a growing social epidemic is not known, but authorities are putting the pieces together as to how it unfolded. Well, shortly after 8:30 in the morning, a little after the shooting began, dozens of D.C. Metro Police converged on the Washington Naval Yard as the report, a shooter on the loose, spread, and naval employees were running for their lives trying to get out. One such employee, Todd Brundage, said, "People were pushing, shoving, they were falling down. After we came outside, people were climbing the walls to get out of the place. It was just crazy."
Navy Commander Tim Gyrus was outside in an alley when a man that he did not know approached him and told him there was a shooter inside. Now, the commander responded, "Well, that's news to me." And that was about the extent of our conversation, he said, and I heard 2 shots, and he, referring to the man that gave him that report, got hit. Now, as officers went door to door looking for the gunman, employees still inside were told that they need to take shelter in their offices. Now, many of the victims were on the first floor of the building in an open atrium when Alexis rained down gunfire from a higher floor in the building.
Employees at the base said that they are not checked for weapons when they enter the building. Getting guns through security is not difficult for anyone with proper ID. One officer was quoted as saying, "I could walk in any day I wanted to, and that was my disposition." You kind of hope that everyone else you work with doesn't do that and doesn't start shooting people in your office. Now, Vincent Gray, which is D.C.'s mayor, said there's a possibility that there's a second shooter still at large. Of course, they say that he was caught on surveillance cameras, so they're looking for him.
Now, the mayor said during a press conference there was a person wearing a dab olive uniform, around 50 years of age, around 5'10", African-American man, and we're continuing to look for him to determine what, if any, involvement he may have had. And that was what the mayor said. Now, the shooting led to shutdowns throughout the city. Less than a mile away, the Senate went into lockdown, and flights were briefly grounded at National Airport so that they wouldn't interfere with the police helicopters that were, hovering over the scene of the shooting.
Of course, with the possibility of another shooter at large, residents are being urged to stay indoors with their doors locked.
Well, despite the morality of man getting weaker, there are things that are getting stronger, but not in a beneficial way. We're talking about the microorganisms that are becoming more resistant to antibiotics, also known as superbugs. Now, a new report from the CDC says we may face catastrophic consequences if we don't act to control the superbugs. Dr. Holly Phillips, a CBS News medical contributor, said that this latest report by the CDC was shocking and that she believed the CDC wanted to send a powerful message, hence the reason they released these type of numbers.
She continued, "We've heard about superbugs in the past. Now, these are bacteria that are resistant to every antibiotic we have available. According to the CDC, over 2 million Americans get sick every year due to superbugs, and over 23,000 die. And of course, this is annually. These are more numbers that we're seeing with the flu who actually get infected with these superbugs. And one of the purpose for the shocking release of these numbers was to mobilize the medical community and patients into action because we use antibiotics too much in both medicine and agriculture. In fact, 80% of antibiotics used in our nation are involved in farming and livestock. And some estimate that 50% of all antibiotics are prescribed shouldn't be prescribed, or they're used inappropriately.
50%.
That's quite a bit.
Well, Dr. Phillips said that it's a mix as to who's at fault for the overuse of antibiotics, because doctors want to treat patients and make sure that they are not going to miss something, but the patients don't want to have to wait a long time to get better. Now, another issue on the table is that when people get sick, they oftentimes have a cold virus, and an antibiotic won't do anything to kill the virus, only bacteria. Now, the bacteria that the CDC listed as most urgent is a class called CRE, and includes E. coli, Salmonella, Shigella, as well as gonorrhea and C. difficile. And these bacteria are the ones that are spreading very rampant in the hospitals.
You know, that's kind of scary to think about that. I mean, the place people go for help, they're actually getting more infections while they're there. Right. Well, Dr. Holly Phillips concluded, there will be a time, or come a time, when we reach into our big arsenal of drugs for someone who's very sick, and we will not be able to help them. And I think that's why the CDC really wanted to get this message out there.
Well, once again this week, Secretary of State John Kerry spoke on the evidence the United States has regarding the Syrian chemical attacks and the importance of putting a stop to the Assad government. Now, after Kerry presented the evidence, he said, the world can decide whether sarin was used by the regime, which has used chemical weapons before, the regime which had the rockets, had the weapons, or whether opposition secretly went unnoticed into a territory they don't control to fire rockets they don't have, containing sarin they don't possess, to kill their own people. Then, without even being noticed, he said, they just disassembled it all, packed up, and got out of the center of Damascus, controlled by Assad.
Sense a little sarcasm in Secretary Kerry's statement there. Secretary Kerry went on to say this isn't complicated. When we said that we know what was true, we meant it. And now, before I head to New York for the UN General Assembly, we have a definitive UN report strengthening the case and solidifying our resolve. Now, the test comes. The Security Council must be prepared to act next week. It is vital to the international community to stand up and speak out in the strongest possible terms about the importance of enforceable action to rid the world of Syria's chemical weapons.
Well, the Putin Obama relationship hasn't shown any real signs of improvement lately. In an opposite the editorial page, President Putin commented on President Obama's recent address to the nation by saying, "My working and personal relationship with President Obama is marked with growing trust. I appreciate this. I carefully studied his address to the nation on Tuesday, and I would rather disagree with the case he made on American exceptionalism."
President Obama had said in his address to the nation that the United States policy is what makes America different. It's what makes us exceptional. To this, Putin said, it is extremely dangerous to encourage people to see themselves as exceptional, whatever the motivation.
Andrew Sullivan, founding editor of The Dish, was asked if he was surprised at these comments President Putin made. He said, "I think the argue of American exceptionalism is interesting and important for Americans to hear it, because that's what the rest of the world feels a lot of the time. What Americans take for granted," he said, "is that because we are an exceptional country, we can do things that other countries cannot do." Well, at some point, he went on to say that other countries are going to say, "Why? What gave you the right to do all this stuff?"
Sure. Mr. Sullivan concluded, and so in that sense, I think it reminds us what the rest of the world sees. Even though America's doing it for good reasons and with good intentions, I think there is and Putin represents this perfectly, there's a sense of who do you think you are? And this is what he says.
Well, Christiane Amanpour, chief international correspondent for CNN, agreed with Andrew Sullivan's comments and added, "This is so Putin," she said. "It's like he just said, 'Who do you think you are, President Obama? Who do you think you are, United States?' He just has these really poisonous relations right now with the United States." She concluded, "It hasn't always been like this. Remember good old Boris Yeltsin. He was a Russian president the U.S. could work with."
I think they compared Boris Yeltsin in Russia at that time to being like a teddy bear. Of course, now Putin in Russia is more like a grizzly bear.
Well, from deadly shootings to deadly superbugs, and with the threat of nuclear war looming at this time, the world continues to become an unsafe place. Now, Yeshua Hawkins of the House of Yahweh has repeatedly stated that only a fool could look at the world's events today and not see that prophecy is being fulfilled. To learn more about these prophecies and what you can do to come out of this world, call or write the House of Yahweh today and request your free Prophetic Word magazine or monthly newsletter.
You can contact the House of Yahweh at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. Or you can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Don't forget to visit them on the web at www.yahweh.com or www.yeshuahawkins.com. Or send them an email at info@yahweh.com. And all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is Yeshua Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.